Hello Kitty, me gusta mi titties, me gusta mi booty. Hoy me tomo selfie con filtro Hello Kitty.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to episode 2 of Dangerous Games Podcast, a sports crime podcast. I am here. I am Courtney with Reckless Cards, and this is my good and beautiful friend, Sarah from Mrs. Squirt's Cards. She is the original Mrs. Breaker. Today is a Sarah-centric episode. Sarah will be in the hot seat and giving her case today. So I'm going to go ahead and let you know what we're going to be talking about.
Perfect. Alrighty, thank you, Courtney. So mine isn't a murder mystery this time. Mine is just an MLB player who grew up in poverty on the south central area of LA. He had a father in the picture, and I think that's a huge thing too. Like with yours last week, you mentioned not having a father figure, and I think that a lot of athletes kind of get lost in their ways because they don't have that male presence in their life. Well, this player also didn't have that. He did, but his dad was abusive. He was negative. That's all he did.
That is the worst.
There was nothing positive that his dad said or did for him or his siblings or his mother.
You know, my case next week also, it doesn't have a dad in the picture. The dad leaves, yeah.
And it's depressing because it's like we're failing them too, because it's like if these people would have gotten the attention they needed, a healthy attention, could they have been better athletes? And then that would have then revolved into a better, healthier hobby too, card community and just everything. And so he actually came home one day, and his brother and his dad have actually been removed from the home. His dad was forcefully removed from the home, and he would never see his dad again until he became something.
Of course.
And I think that kind of brings in where adults and parents start feeding off the
success of
their kids. And don't get me wrong, his dad was a very successful baseball player, softball player too. He kind of showed him how to be one. He loved basketball, actually, though. That was his pride and joy, was basketball. So it's kind of interesting you saying that basketball wasn't the love of your last one, because it's like this is the same sense. It's like he loved basketball, built for basketball, tall, skinny, perfect. But baseball came easy, and it was an outlet for him. It's a way that he hid from the abuse. It's a way that he made what little friends he could. He wasn't the all-star his junior year in high school because there was a bigger man in the field, but he became that big man his senior year, and he actually got drafted right out of his senior year.
Oh my God, I'm dying to know who this is.
What?
I'm
dying to see how far I can go without you knowing. So his goal was always be the first pick. That's a huge thing in any sport. And he wanted to be the first pick, and it actually got fulfilled.
Oh.
The New York Mets took him first pick, first round in 1983.
So that was a year. I wasn't even born yet.
I wasn't either. I was nothing. Okay. The Mets gave him $200,000 as a sign-on bonus to not go to college, which is crazy.
Well, in 83, $200,000.
That's a lot.
I wonder what I'm gonna have to start doing the calculations.
I was thinking the same thing. So, in order to get onto the Mets team, you obviously have to go through the minors and work your way up the ladder. And so he did that. He went to Tennessee, which is where they have their minors farm. Sounds really weird and funny, but
baseball. So, full disclosure, baseball is not
you don't just go.
It's not my number one sport. All the farm teams and everything. I'm really terrible at knowing that.
So baseball is actually my horrible sport, but for some reason I was like, hey, let's do a baseball player. But honestly, it's kind of got a really interesting turn to it. So he was drafted in 1980, played for the 1983 Mets. He was called up in 1983.
And he was first round draft in 1980.
1980. Yes.
Okay.
That was my mistake. And that same year was the first year that he was introduced to cocaine.
Oh no.
Coming from a home that was broken, he always strived for attention. He always looked for attention, and sometimes that attention led him down some very dark roads. So he started doing cocaine in 1983. Then
So I cheated and I Googled it. Now I know who you're talking about.
you told me not to do that. And so in 1984, he started using other drugs, other legal drugs, if you want to say that.
So in baseball at this time, this is when they weren't doing any kind of drug testing.
Not yet. It became a need later on, and I'll get to that because it's kind of interesting because I think not only did his childhood play a huge role in who he became, but I also think that the organization of the MLB failed him because they didn't give him the proper testing because they didn't want to, because they didn't want to lose him.
Right.
Because the New York Mets weren't anything. Nobody went to the games, but as soon as they found out that he was going to be on their team, they started selling out. They started, tickets were going through the roof and everything like that. So he brought money to New York. And
Are you gonna tell us who it is now?
Okay, fine, I will. It's Darryl Strawberry.
Darryl Strawberry.
Mr. Strawberry.
I'm going to tell you, my earliest memory of Darryl Strawberry was I was watching an episode of The Simpsons where Homer went to a baseball game, sat out in the field and went, Darryl. And then they cut to like Darryl Strawberry standing in the field with like one tear dripping down his eye.
Daryl.
Children, that's not very nice.
Mom, they're professional athletes. They're used to this sort of thing. It rolls right off their backs.
And it's funny you say that because it's like who he was, like player-wise, like phenomenal. Like the stats were disgusting.
Yeah.
But he had an addiction.
Mm-hmm.
And he was grossly addicted to drugs. Later on became women, which okay, but it is what it is. People have their own thing, but they did start. He couldn't hide his addiction anymore because he was bringing it to the clubhouse.
Oh no!
Yes, he was also bringing the women to the clubhouse.
Oh no!
So, not only was he the bad boy, but he was also taking a possibility of losing his career. But the coach was like, no, we're not going to test him. We're not going to test him. We're not going to try to save him because we're not going to do that. He then left at the 1990 season. At the end of that season, he left the Mets because his coach was leaving. And his coach is the only one that was keeping his addiction hidden from the outside world. So as soon as his coach was gone, he was like, I'm a free agent. Like, I'm not doing this. Peace out. That same year, he got hit with a domestic violence. He slapped his wife and then pulled a gun on her because she pulled, this is where like the crazy woman, I could see myself doing this. She pulled a brass pipe out on him and beat him in his ribs. And he pulled a gun on her. Okay.
So he was thinking self-defense?
Yes. And
sounds like they were both doing drugs.
Probably. And she actually dropped the charges later. But the reason I think that this all stemmed is because 2 days before that, he found out that he had fathered a child back in Missouri in 1988.
Do you know I had no idea about all of this? None. I didn't know any of this.
Well, it gets
I thought he was kind of like I don't know.
It gets better. So after that, he agrees to pay child support. He's the father. What are you going to do?
Well, he has no choice.
Right. And you are the father. Maury
says.
Yes. Anyways, so in 1991, he gets signed on by the That's some good money there.
That is some coin. In 91 too. I wonder what.
91 to 93, he played for the Dodgers, had a back injury, and had surgery. Dealt with rumors of his addiction, denied those allegations, eventually came clean to the Dodgers, and the Dodgers sent him for treatment.
Oh, well, that was good. Well, that's good. So the Dodgers did the right thing.
Right. Then, once he got out of treatment, they cut ties with him.
Oh.
So, kind of like a trigger, I feel like. It didn't. But in 1994, the San Francisco 49ers, football, Giants picked him up because he promised them a life of sobriety. He had a great season, and the Giants promised to bring him back for the 1995. He had a spot on the team. No questions asked. 1994 is when the players' strike was
I
going
remember
on.
that. I actually remember that. So
it cut the season.
Right.
So I mean, I understood that. Well, this is
he
where
had time on his hands now, right?
Too much time on his
hands. Too much time, yeah.
Yes. 1995 season did not come due to problems with the IRS. Mr. Strawberry himself. This is what I found was so interesting. He was in trouble for not reporting income from card show appearances and was facing possible jail time.
What? So like
Yes.
signing in card
He's at
shows?
these card shows and he's not documenting it. And I'm like, how do you get away with that? Like, is that?
Well, you don't.
I mean, well, duh. But like, how did you get this far? I mean, they're saying years of signings that he got away with.
Well, think about all these celebrities in the 90s. Don't you remember there was like a huge crackdown and like all of a sudden all these celebrities were getting like busted for like non-compliance with the IRS? Like I remember that being a thing. I was a kid in the 90s.
I was young. Yes. We were young whippersnappers. So because he did not get to play, he relapsed. He had been clean and had been doing really good on his life. He relapsed and started using hard drugs again, and he started failing drug tests.
Oh.
Well, in 1995, at the end of that year, he was charged for failure to make child support payments.
Oh no. So he is just, this is
He's
a spiral.
just been kind of like, I feel like he was kind of destined to kind of, he got into this path because he didn't know any different, and he was so hungry for attention and just to be wanted and to be loved and to be needed. Kind of like your guy last week was just kind of like, he came from some really dark places, and it's just like, and that he has his own demons. And 1995 to 1999, he did get put back onto a team. He was with the Yankees.
I remember when he was on the Yankees.
In 96, he had a deadline to pay his child support, or he was facing jail time. And he said, okay, I will pay. It was going to go to trial. So he's like, I'm going to pay, but I'll use my money from the sign-on bonus from the New York Yankees. Makes sense. And so he did that. And so he didn't have to go to jail. Well, that year he ended with the World Series. This man, what was it? 3 World Series championships, which, like,
see, that's what I remember about him. I don't because I watched the White Sox. So you were talking about him bringing women back to the clubhouse of the Mets, and all I could think of was like LaRoche bringing his kid to the clubhouse, and that was a huge controversy. I can't imagine all these guys, like this guy bringing all these like train of ladies into the clubhouse.
And that's kind of like, when I was reading this, I was like, and like doing my research on this, I was like, how you wouldn't make it nowadays, like if any of this, because
no,
and you kind of feel like maybe not saying him exactly, but players like him put the foundation for the players today, where there is drug testing now. There are more rules about what you can and can't do.
Well, think about the millions of dollars, millions and millions of dollars that these teams are spending on these players to have them like be out doing drugs and like affecting their career and the reputation of the organization. And how did he even father a kid in St. Louis when he was playing? It was like a one-night stand when they were out playing a game.
Must have been that.
It's like you finish hitting You finish a game of the Cardinals and you go out and like get some strange. Like,
I don't know. I mean, that I it's kind of like, and it's not unheard of, but it's just kind of like, dang. And then she waited 3 years, like whatever.
I actually knew a guy that happened to, where like he didn't find out he had a baby until the baby was born. I was like, ooh.
Oh, I've had that. I've heard about that too. I have not had that happen personally, but I've
You're just like out having babies.
me
He's
personally,
like,
yeah. No, he's
you have like a
going
third
through it.
child running around the house, and he's like, well, whose child is this? And she's like,
That
actually,
would be
it's yours.
What's just actually really interesting is in August of 1988, Robert Shapiro, that name might sound familiar because it's OJ's attorney,
Yes.
sued Strawberry for failure to pay dues that he owed him in the sum of $100,000
Oh my
for
God,
contract stuff
Daryl,
with the
you gotta
Dodgers.
pay your bills.
Dude, you can't run and hide, okay? This is what we're learning today. We
Dude,
cannot
like
run and
Daryl's just like all of his collection notices are showing up, and he's just throwing them in the trash. He's like, IRS.
hide. I don't know what
support,
that is.
Robert
Yeah.
Shapiro. No, fam,
And then
I'm
in
not doing this.
towards the end of 1998, he was diagnosed with colon cancer.
Oh,
And he had surgery a couple of days after they found out that he had colon cancer. And I'm gonna have to Google this later, and I meant to do it before. I don't know how big your colon is. And this might sound like a stupid thing, but they removed 24 inches of his colon.
so I have no idea how big.
So
colon
first
is, but
off,
I was
I
always
thought your
told,
colon was like this
colons-
big. Okay, so I don't know. So he went through all of that. He had a couple more cancers. He had lymph node type of cancer.
Oh,
It came
how
back
much did you say he had removed?
24 inches.
So your colon
Yes, please tell me.
is like it says 22 feet total.
What?
How big is
Yeah.
a normal size? 5 feet. I'm sorry. Your entire large intestine and all that plus the
So
colon.
he lost like almost half of it.
24. So he lost like
2
2
feet.
fifths. Yeah.
Well, that's crazy. I mean, if you think about it, like that's
Most people don't survive colon cancer. That's like one of the things.
And
You
he's
must
had
have
it a
had for-
couple times, and that's the sad part. I think he was supposed to be at Nationals. I can't remember if he actually made it last year. No, Chicago year last year.
I think he was there in Chicago. I feel like he was.
I thought he was, but he's canceled a lot of things because of his health. So who knows? But I knew he was on the list.
Yeah.
And he went through multiple cancer scares. Not scares, they were legit
actually had
cancer,
it,
but
yeah.
he had to go through situations of removing them. And then in 1999, at this point, he's just kind of doing his own thing. He's relapsed. He's playing, but he's relapsed. And so this is actually his last year with the Yankees, is in 1999. He was arrested for soliciting sex from an undercover cop and having a small amount of cocaine.
Oof.
And he pleaded no contest. Can you please tell me why you would plead no contest when you were doing it with a cop? Trying to, okay? And so I was like, well, whatever. 21 months of probation is what he got. Well, he got the Yankees to the World Series that year. And
So
that
he gets popped for soliciting.
all this, and he's
He
still
pleads
playing.
no contest, which is like basically saying guilty, like I'm not
Right.
contesting these charges.
Correct.
He gets 24 months of probation. How do you serve probation if your job by nature makes you travel outside
Not
of the
house
state?
arrest. And I think because
But like, isn't probation? Are you like not allowed to leave a certain? I don't know.
wouldn't-
I've never been arrested.
I don't know. I've never been arrested, and I've never done house arrest or probation. So I don't.
I
don't
suppose if
know.
like that's your job, they're like as long as you're working, you
Right.
think it's,
Maybe
like,
that's because they do let you leave for your work. So
well,
maybe
that's. I mean, how like probation, you're allowed to like go places. Maybe it's parole where you're not allowed to like leave an area because you have to meet. It's parole.
right. I think it's parole. I
I
think
think
you're
I'm
right.
mixing them up.
Yeah. Probation is the same thing. I think you just have to check in and do drug tests with probation.
Yeah,
Um,
and I'm sure he's back in New York enough that when
Well,
you have home
he's
games and stuff.
doing
so.
everything. And he did not do well in the Yankees for their years that he was there.
Well, no,
being
I mean-
right across the area from the Mets where he started. He did bring home a title, but he wasn't the same Strawberry before he relapsed, obviously, because he went harder. And so in 2000, right after he finished, he said, I'm done. Done. Last season was 1999. He moved on with his life, so be it, type of situations, kind of how his attitude was about it. In 2000, he tried to drive to see his probation officer on painkillers. And while driving, he blacked out and rear-ended another car and then tried to drive away. And an off-duty cop saw the crash, apprehended him at gunpoint. And the next day, he admitted to the charges and probation was revoked. And he had 2 years of house arrest.
Oh, my God.
Now he's stuck at home.
Now, you or I did something like this, and our asses would be in jail. You're not getting house
Right?
arrest for 2
Like,
minutes. A side
Literally
note,
one.
I got hit and run today at the school. Some lady hit me and then drove off.
You didn't tell me this.
I know, I totally forgot until you just said that.
I mean, there was a lot going on today, so I totally understand.
It was a crazy day. But yeah, she like backed into me and then just drove away. I was like,
What?
hey. I know who she is too, because she knows, her kid is in my kid's class. So I know her.
That's
I'm
always
like-
the best.
I'm like, why would you drive away? Like, I know you. Like, I know you. Like, I can.
That's so bad. So this whole time he's actually down in Tampa. He's not up in New York, because the treatment center that he was going to was down in Tampa.
So he's in a
so-
treatment center. He's driving on pain pills. I don't think that treatment center was working too well for him.
Well, we all know that he was, getting it probably as soon as he left his treatment center.
That's terrible.
So he went. He actually left his drug treatment center at one point and went and used drugs with a female friend, breaking both his house arrest and parole.
Oh, yeah.
So November 9th of 2000, so in 2000 was his year of crime, he was sentenced to 40 days in jail with credit for time served. He had also told the judge that he had lost the will to live and stopped chemo because of his cancer. And then November 30th, he was released from jail and sent back to the treatment house. He kind of wasn't on the radar anymore. And then in 2001, he was arrested again for disappearing from his house, the halfway house or the treatment facility in Tampa. This man has left this place a few times, and yet he is still able to leave again. And he
How
was
long is
sentenced.
he supposed to be there?
It was
2 years, you said, right? It was 2 years.
Yep. Yeah. So they went back and they actually in May forced more time because he wouldn't stay. So that was awesome. He then started failing drug tests at the facility.
Yeah.
So then when he was for his child support, they put him on probation. So then that probation was keeping him from going to jail. Well, then that probation became parole, and then that parole became house arrest and parole because of all these other drug charges that he has on him.
So he's just piling up and piling.
Right.
Again, this is where you see that like athlete privilege, because a normal, like regular citizen would not be given all of these chances. They would not be allowed to leave their treatment facility. They wouldn't be allowed to not pay their child support. They would be in jail.
Yep. So from going back to his 21 months of probation that he originally had back in 1999, the judge was like, listen, I'm sorry, you're not listening. You're not doing what you're supposed to do. And so I'm going to order you to serve the 22 months in jail because you are not listening. He only served after 11 months. He was out. He then I guess 2005 is so long ago now that I think about it. But in 2005, he decided to file a false police report about his SUV being stolen.
Oh no. Oh, Daryl.
And his wife filed for divorce. Well, I'm surprised she stayed with him the whole time that he was doing everything else. Like, this man literally was bringing hookers and prostitutes to the clubhouse while he is married to you.
So she was married to him the whole time when he was bringing the sex workers and stuff to the clubhouse, and the pregnant girl
Yes.
Oh my gosh. And she's the one who hit him with the gold pipe
Yes.
the same way. And so all this time, and now she finally files for divorce.
Yep.
Did he
Apparently,
have children with her? Do you know?
not that I'd seen. I haven't. He must have though, because he's got 3 kids, and his youngest, or I guess it is the youngest or the middle one, has the same kind of attitude that Daryl had growing up. And so, and kind of like, not saying that he's doing drugs, but it's got that kind of bad boy attitude, you know. And what's really interesting though is this man has done everything. Like literally, he has done everything. He is now a minister. He opened up his own church, his own ministry.
The Church of Strawberry?
Strawberry Ministries, girl. It is Strawberry Ministries, okay? And when I read that, I had to read it twice, because it was like, are you serious? Like, is this the same man who couldn't let a line of coke go or a woman go? And you know, he's born again, and he's doing right in the world again. And it's just, it shows you that sometimes you can be that phoenix and come out of the ashes and be something. But when I looked at his cards, just on a hobby level, I was like, man, this guy can't be worth anything, because he's the epitome of what you don't want your kids to be. So why would people collect him? Not saying that they don't. I'm just saying that maybe it's
not exactly a role model.
Role model, exactly. Yeah. No, I mean, his cards have value. He has value. His autograph has value, and it's just like, it blows my mind, because
even with all of this, he clearly is, you know, a talent. Addiction is terrible. Addiction is horrible. It destroys lives. It destroys families. It, you know, think about what he could have been.
Yep.
You know, maybe he could have won a lot more. Maybe he could have arguably been like the best baseball player that has ever existed. If he was doing all of this while actively, you know, dealing with addiction, imagine what he would have been like without that.
And not even, like, what if the Dodgers, when they stepped in and said, no, dude, you need some help? Like, what if the Mets did that when they should have done it?
Yeah.
You know?
Or what if the Dodgers would have stuck with him when he got out of
rehab?
Rehab. Yeah.
I mean, you know, it seemed like that it was more of his illness that kind of broke him than anything else, which I completely understand. Illnesses break people all the time. And like, for me personally, having my back injury, it has broken me as a person. I could not fathom cancer and just the toll that takes on a person. So it's like, man, this kid needed somebody to
you have cancer, and then, you know, addiction is a disease. So he's struggling with so much.
Yep.
And, you know, I'm really glad to hear that he got, in the end, it seems like he got himself together, and maybe he found God for himself. You know, that's great. That helps a lot of people. Yeah. And, you know, if he is doing, you know, better, that's the best you can hope for with someone who has suffered from addiction, is that they stay clean. So,
and I think you're so right. And I think that also brings it to light that you don't truly know what somebody's going through in life either. Yep. No. And everybody has their own demons.
And these athletes are human beings. I think people forget that. That is a really, I think that they look at them as, and I said it in the last one, it's a commodity. They aren't a person. They are something to be bought and sold. And we do it in the hobby every day. And athletes face this, like with, you know, how well they play, if they sign autographs, if they do, you know, they show up for events, and if they have, you know, deals for, you know, advertisers and all of the stuff that they get. And it's pressure. And I think that it, like, as we go on with this podcast, you're just going to see, I feel like a lot of these people they're just humans, and they don't deal with the pressure properly, or they look at themselves sometimes, because they are people, and people are, you know, fallible. They look at themselves and they think that they're more important, or
less
and they're
important.
or less important, but often they think that they're above things because they never
definitely ego is a huge thing.
It is, and you
in
see these athletes
sports.
that do these horrible things over and over and over and over again, and they don't really see any consequences to their behavior. So sometimes we create monsters within the sports space, and
I feel like Daryl's a huge example of all of those things combined, because we created him. I mean, you honestly could sit here and say that, because we encouraged him to continue his addiction. We encouraged him
or just turn a blind eye to it, as long as he was like, the second he wasn't, performing, then it became a problem. But while he was performing, we don't care what you do.
And the fact that everybody else is getting drug tested and not him, and it's like not necessarily, I think it was like a mandate too, I think, at that time. And so it's like, why are we giving privileges, which still happens today? Privileges are still made for certain players in certain, I think we're starting to take sports more important, having a higher importance than life, and that's not okay.
Yeah. I do like to see, I feel like that in this day and age, I think that people are starting to recognize that we do that on some level. It's getting a little better. But there's always those people that, like, every time they come up with a new safety rule, to help, because wait till we get into some of these NFL players with their concussions and wrestlers, CTE, and the things that they're doing that have been like linked to that. So when the NFL or these NBA, they come out with things to help protect the players and keep them safe, and then you'll inevitably have the fans that are complaining, these players are soft, and when I was there, blah blah blah. But this is like, they're humans, and they're not invincible, and they're dying or hurting people because of the damage that they're getting, playing on these sustaining from these sports. So I think it's good. It's good to have these discussions. It's good to talk about it, and it's good to recognize that we have to look out for people. And also hold them accountable, because if Daryl had been held accountable, really held accountable at any point, he could have come back and played and been whatever. He was clearly an excellent player, and he could have been cleaned up and healthy way sooner in his career, and maybe he would have been able to play longer. You don't know, I don't know.
Yeah.
And who knows what could have happened if anyone in his life, as far as his professional life, had done the right thing and not, just turned a blind eye while he was in active addiction,
or encourage it. I mean, his teammates who are the ones that actually introduced him to the drug and encouraged him to do it, because that's what you do when you're in the major leagues. Yeah. And I think having that kind of mindset, and that's still going on today.
Well, and some people just have addictive personalities. It's within them. If you have addiction that runs in your family and you may not even know it, it doesn't, some people can casually do drugs, and I mean, I don't I don't know, but I am aware that there are people that can casually do drugs and just that's it, and they're fine. And there's other people that it just takes one time and they're completely deeply addicted.
It triggers something and you don't know it's there.
Yeah,
exactly.
So, well, this was it. I had no idea about all of this. I knew that he was just an exceptional baseball player. Obviously, I didn't really follow any of the teams that he was on, and I was in the 90s. I was really very much Bulls, Chicago Bulls. I was on that. I wasn't paying as much attention to baseball.
I was a Blazer.
All right. Well, I appreciate everyone for joining us. If you liked this, please feel free to subscribe, and follow us for more content. And we appreciate you. Until next time, stay safe and have a great week.
Hello Kitty, me gusta mi titties, me gusta mi booty, hoy me tomo un selfie con filtro Hello Kitty.